After the war, I've been at the Constitutional Convention. I went back to New York.
After the war,
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
I went back to New York.
I've been at the Constitutional Convention. Finished up my studies and I've been at the Constitutional Convention. I practiced law. I've been at the Constitutional Convention.
Practice law, Burr work next door.
Even though we been at the Constitutional Convention. Started at the very same time. Alexander Hamilton been at the Constitutional Convention. Began to climb. How to account for his rise to the top? Man, the man is non-stop.
Gentlemen of the jury, I'm curious, bear with me.
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
Are you
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
aware that we're
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
making history? This is the first murder trial of our
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
brand new nation, the liberty behind deliberation. I
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
intend to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt with my assistant counsel.
Co-counsel Hamilton. Been at the Constitutional Convention. Sit down, a client, let me begin at the Constitutional Convention. This is innocent, call your first witness. That's all you been at the Constitutional Convention. Had to say.
Okay, one more thing.
Why do you been at the Constitutional Convention? Assume you're the smartest in the room. Why do you been at the Constitutional Convention? Assume you're the smartest in the room. Why do you been at the Constitutional Convention? Assume you're the smartest in the room. Assume that attitude may be your doom. Why do you been at the Constitutional Convention? Right, like you're running out of time. Right, day and night, like you're running out of time. Every day you've been at the Constitutional Convention. Right, like you're running out of time. Keep on fighting in the meantime. Non-stop.
Corruption's such an old song that we
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
can sing along in harmony. You know, where is it stronger than in Albany? This colony's economy's increasingly stalling, and honestly, that's why public service seems to be calling it.
Been at the Constitutional Convention. Been at the Constitutional Convention.
Practice the law,
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
practically perfected it.
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
I've seen injustice in the world, and I've
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
corrected it. Now for a strong central democracy. If not, then I'll be
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
Socrates throwing verbal rocks at these mediocrities.
Hamilton. Been at the Constitutional Convention. Been at the Constitutional Convention.
Was chosen for the Constitutional Convention.
There is a New York junior delegate.
Now what I'm-
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
I'm gonna say may sound indelicate.
Goes and proposes his own form of government. His own plan for a new form of government. Talks for 6 hours, the convention is listless.
Bright young man. Yo, who the F is this?
Why do you been at the Constitutional Convention? You always say what you believe. Why do you been at the Constitutional Convention? You always say what you believe. Every proclamation guarantees free ammunition for your enemies. Why do you been at the Constitutional Convention? Right like it's going out of style. Right day and night like it's going out of style. Every day been at the Constitutional Convention. Fight like it's going out of style. Do what you been at the Constitutional Convention. Do. Alexander. Been at the Constitutional Convention.
Aaron Burr.
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
Sir,
Well, it's the middle of the night.
can we confer, sir?
Is this a legal matter?
Yes, and it's important to me.
Been at the Constitutional Convention. What do you need?
Burr.
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
You're a-
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
Better lawyer than me.
Okay.
I know I
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
talk too much. I'm
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
abrasive. You're
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
incredible in court. You're succinct, persuasive. My client needs a strong defense. You're
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
the solution.
Who's your client?
The new U.S. Constitution?
No.
Hear me out.
No way.
A series of essays anonymously published defending the document to the public.
No one will read it.
I disagree.
And if it fails, been at the Constitutional Convention.
Burr, that's why
Been at the Constitutional
we
Convention.
need it.
The Constitution's a mess.
So it needs amendments.
It's full of contradictions.
So is independence. We
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
have to start somewhere.
No, no way. Been at the Constitutional
You're
Convention.
making a mistake.
Good night.
Hey, what are you
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
waiting for? What do you
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
stall for?
What?
We
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
won the war. What was it all for? Do you
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
support this Constitution?
Of course.
Then defend it.
And what if you've been at the Constitutional Convention backing the wrong horse?
Burr.
Been at the Constitutional Convention.
Burr.
in at the Constitutional Convention.
Studied and we
In at the Constitutional Convention.
fought and we
In at the Constitutional Convention.
killed for the notion of a nation. We
In at the Constitutional Convention.
now get to build. For once in your
In at the Constitutional Convention.
life, take a stand with pride. I
In at the Constitutional Convention.
don't understand how you
In at the Constitutional Convention.
stand to the side.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
Keep all my plans close to my chest.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
Wait here and see which way the wind will blow.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
Taking my time watching
In at the Constitutional Convention.
afterbirth of a nation, watching the tension grow.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
I'm sailing off to London.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
I'm accompanied by someone who always pays.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
I found a wealthy husband who will keep me
In at the Constitutional Convention.
in comfort for all my days. He
In at the Constitutional Convention.
is not a lot of fun, but there's no one who can match you.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
For turn of phrase, my Alexander.
In at the Constitutional Convention. In at the Constitutional Convention.
Don't forget to ride. Look at where you are.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
Look at where you
In at the Constitutional Convention.
started. The fact that you're
In at the Constitutional Convention.
alive is a miracle. To stay alive, that would be enough. And if your wife could share a fraction of your time, if I could bring
In at the Constitutional Convention. In at the Constitutional Convention.
peace of mind, would that be enough?
Alexander
In at the Constitutional Convention.
joins forces with James Madison
In at the Constitutional Convention.
and John Jay
In at the Constitutional Convention.
to write a series of essays defending the new United States Constitution entitled The Federalist Papers. The plan was to write a total of 25 essays, the work divided evenly among the three men. In the end, they wrote 85 essays in the span of 6 months. John Jay
In at the Constitutional Convention.
got sick after writing 5. James Madison
In at the Constitutional Convention.
wrote 29. Hamilton
In at the Constitutional Convention.
wrote the other 51. How do you
In at the Constitutional Convention.
write like you're
In at the Constitutional Convention.
running out of time? Right day and night like
In at the Constitutional Convention.
you're running out of time. Every day you fight,
In at the Constitutional Convention. In at the Constitutional Convention.
running out of time like you're
In at the Constitutional Convention.
running out of time.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
Running out of time. How do you
In at the Constitutional Convention.
write like tomorrow won't arrive? How do you
In at the Constitutional Convention.
write like you needed to survive? How do you
In at the Constitutional Convention.
write every second you're
In at the Constitutional Convention.
alive? Every second you're
In at the Constitutional Convention.
alive. Every second you're
In at the Constitutional Convention.
alive.
They're asking me
In at the Constitutional Convention.
to lead.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
I'm doing the best I can to get the people that I
In at the Constitutional Convention.
need. I'm asking you
In at the Constitutional Convention.
to be my right hand, treasury or state. I know
In at the Constitutional Convention.
it's a lot to ask. Treasury or state. To leave behind the world. You
In at the Constitutional Convention.
know. Sir, do you want me to run the Treasury or State Department? Treasury. Let's go.
Alexander,
In at the Constitutional Convention.
I have to leave.
Alexander,
In at the Constitutional Convention.
Look around at how lucky we
In at the Constitutional Convention.
are to be alive right now.
helpless.
They are asking me
In at the Constitutional Convention.
to leave.
Look around, isn't this enough?
In at the Constitutional Convention.
We'll never be satisfied.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
We'll never be satisfied. Satisfied.
History
Satisfied.
In at the Constitutional Convention. 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 In at the Constitutional Convention.
Be satisfied.
Constitutional Convention. In at the Constitutional Convention.
History has its eyes on you.
In at the Constitutional Convention. In at the Constitutional Convention.
Not throwing away my shot.
In at the Constitutional Convention. In at the Constitutional Convention.
I'm not throwing away my shot.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
I am Alexander Hamilton.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
Hamilton.
In at the Constitutional Convention.
Justice.
In at the Constitutional Convention. In at the Constitutional Convention.
I'm not throwing away my shot.
In at the Constitutional Convention.